to CommuniTEA. Like always, we are going to be spilling the tea and having raw, unfiltered conversations about love, relationships, community empowerment, dating, all of that good stuff like all season long. Like usual, we're here on behalf of United Black Element. If you're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and you're interested in free HIV and syphilis testing, you can actually call the number 214-393-3700. So, seeing how this is the Christmas episode, we thought that we'd bring in spirituality into the conversation, starting with Christianity. Because the thing is that everybody here on the panel is Black. Almost all of us, if not all of us, are from the South. And one common thing about that intersection is being raised with a strong Christian foundation or being very, very familiar with it. So to start off the conversation, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. So when it comes to Christianity, is this a religion? Is this a philosophy? Is this a concept that you were raised with as a Black, same gender loving man?
It's a scam. Rephrase the question.
Everybody
No,
well, I guess,
I like the question.
I guess for me, I was brought up in a Christian home, a Christian household. My parents are pastors. My grandmother is a pastor. My great grandmother was a mother of the church. Raised up in the Kojic church as my parents got older. Switched to non-denominational Christian. Like I was born in the middle of a gospel choir musical, that my daddy had orchestrated. So I grew up in a Christian household, going to church 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 days a week, And I think that because of that, it's made me a lot of who I am today. So like a lot of the values that I do have are based off of Christianity, just like how to treat people and how to act out of love. And I think that because of my religion growing up, I was able to learn lessons that have been beneficial and impactful into my life that's caused me to get to where I am today.
Anybody have something to add or can relate to anything that Chris just said?
I can relate. Only thing I can't relate to is my parents are not pastors. That's about the only thing. But everything else, I was in church every Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday, choir practice, usher practice, Bible study. So my grandma is 90 and she raised me. And most of her brothers and siblings are, first ladies are pastors. So that's the way I was brought up. Mm-hmm. Non-denominational. So.
Non-denominational. But I would say when I got to a teenager, we really didn't go to church as much. So if at all, and we had churches right around the corner. I think something happened within the church family that we were with, and my mom and dad were they couldn't really find a church home that really resonated with them. So it was we can do things at home. We can always strengthen your own spirituality no matter where you're at. My parents believe, and especially me, I believe that church is not a place per se. I think it's a spirit, and I feel anywhere can be church. You can always have fellowship anywhere, pretty much. So
the Bible says you are the church.
You are the church. Without, look, come on now.
My family, they were, we were very religious, but you could tell it was because of tradition and routine. It wasn't really because my parents, they cut up, so it's just we going every Sunday, but stuff ain't sticking. So do we really believe this stuff?
What's not clicking?
So it's just and then not even just my parents, but even other family members who love to spit Bible verses, just their lives didn't match up with all the stuff they're preaching and teaching. So it was very, very, in my family, people do things out of routine. So yeah.
I like that.
But you know what? I may be going ahead of the gun. But that's the issue that a lot of people have with religion, right? Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times religion is based out of tradition, and tradition stems to routine. And so because of that, a lot of times people don't get the true essence of what religion was meant to be because they're so stuck on meeting societal standards of what people have taught them to be or have taught them what religion is, when in truth it's not.
Right, and that's very much a very good point.
So let's stick a pin in that. Everyone else, as far as where you started with your religion, did anyone else care to offer where they began?
Mine's pretty much the same. Grew up Baptist. My mother forced me in every choir. I was in the males chorus, and they were like 40, 50-year-old men. In all the youth productions, everything. So yeah, we did communion like every morning at the house. So yeah, pretty much the same as everyone else. Started out Baptist, and then some point went to a non-denominational church, and then went back to Baptist. So yeah, a lot of my cousins are pastors. A lot of my aunts are pastors, ministers. So yeah, that's the same.
I went to church. To church like as a kid, but like once I was maybe around 12, 13, we kind of stopped going because I only went because my granny used to go, and then so once she got sick and she wasn't like physically able to go, she was watching on TV. I wasn't going no more. So like then it was more of like a choice for me. Like you can go, but I wasn't gonna go. If she wasn't going, I wasn't going. And then since then, I really never really went back to church. Like I'm a spiritual person. Like I believe in a higher being and treating people right. But overall, like I don't feel like I need to go to a physical church to be at church. Like y'all said.
Right. For me, as far as I can remember growing up, I went to Mount Olive Missionary Baptist Church in Gallion, Louisiana. I don't even know where it is on a map. I can't place it. But I just remember going to church and hating it because it would be so loud. It would be so overstimulating for my senses. The only part that I hated all the singing. I hated it. And that's why a lot of people loved going. For me, I like to go for the sermon. Like, I just wanted to be able to sit there and listen to my little piece and go, like, even when I was a kid. But we went to revival, which would last all day. Sometimes it was dark outside. The best part was being able to eat afterwards. That kind of make up for it. But then having to dress up in the uncomfortable clothes, I'm like,
in the heat, girl.
I couldn't stand it. So when I was like a teenager, what ended up happening is that my mom was like, well, we don't have to go to Baptist church anymore. We can go to non-denominational here in our hometown. So Baptist, everybody in there was black. Non-denominational, black was a minority at this church, and the church was much bigger. It was much more modern. They had Sunday school for teenagers. It was so different. And then I could wear jeans to church. It was. Oh yeah.
Yes. I felt so fit doing that.
No, that was a sin against God. And to this day, I will not. The only time we doing it is we having a picnic in the park.
You could dress like a celebrity off guard. You could wear a t-shirt, jeans, and just any kind of
It's funny because I didn't have that. The only time we really saw people in my hometown dress up to go to church, really honestly, was the CMEs, Christmas, Mother's Day, and Easter. Because everyone and their mama and daddy and granny would be at church on those days. Because granny wants you here because it's Mother's Day, so everybody in their family needs to come, and then the whole family would stand up because you're there visiting your grandmother or your mother, and you have all these lines. And so they're introducing the whole family. So church is packed. But any other time, no. I mean, it was like social distancing in church by the time.
I will say church is where I first pushed the boundaries on exploring my gender. Because my mom, like, it was so confusing because...
Gender?
Yes,
I'm listening.
Gender. And so, like, my mom, even though she was very, like, men shouldn't be doing this, men shouldn't be doing that. When I was little, I remember her, like, really letting me, like, do some very, I guess, what you would call feminine stuff. And so, like, she would let me, I saw her wear stockings one time. And I was like, stockings? Like, she's not... my mom would let me wear stockings to church. And so I was just like, ooh, cool.
Wait, pause. So were you wearing physical stockings or were you wearing knee-highs? Because there's a difference. Stockings is where they're connected and you have to pull them up.
But here's the thing.
And knee-highs, you put them on independently and they come up above your knee.
Right, but see, at the time, no other boys were wearing that, so I wanted to be different, and so I felt closer to her when she would wear like the actual stockings. It was because it was the same material. I related it to that, and so I was just like,
well, let me
I feel like the first lady.
in your head, that might have been femininity, but in the Kojic church, baby, you go men wear knee-high church socks. Cause my daddy got
these weren't socks though. These were like
shit.
But they came over your
That's what you
underwear.
call them. They be that thin.
Wait, but did they come over your underwear or did they come up to your knee?
they came to my knees, but I was wearing.
Yes, it's normal. Yeah, that's
Those
normal.
stockings
But I felt like it was
here.
right. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Y'all are a bit.
I mean,
Well, before I move on to the next question, I did want to address some energy that I felt when we were starting the conversation. So, true enough, I did remix the intro a little bit, and that can be a little bit jarring. But aside from that, I did notice that when I presented the first question, there was a little bit of discomfort in the air to the point that it was palpable. And I find that interesting considering how we all knew what we were going to be talking about tonight. So,
Did we?
where does that come from? Anybody want to throw out there why we'll be uncomfortable starting off this conversation?
I mean, I would say, I guess because it's still taboo, and like from a historical standpoint, to be gay and to talk about religion, that's still a taboo thing. Like granted, we made strides, and there are gay churches, and you know the church is full of gay people in the pulpit, in front of the pulpit, on the pulpit, behind the pulpit, who builds the pulpit. But
and
clean it too, right? But from most viewpoints, it's still a taboo thing. So, like, with that being said, sometimes there's hesitation to talk about authenticity and transparency from personal experience as it relates to church and religion, with us being a group of same-gender loving black men, right? And given like the social cultural context of being gay within the black community, and then layer that on top of religion, it's very hit or miss. It's like walking on eggshells.
so I would say that for me, me knowing anything about gay first came from the church, actually. So, like, I was being teased about being gay from church well before I even knew what that was. And I even had an experience where my mom was just like, I'm coming crying, like, they're teasing me, what is this? And she's just like, she had to, because my mom was like, she did Sunday school. She was the pastor of Sunday school at my church. And so she had to have a conversation with everybody and bring parents in. It's just like, look, at this point, this is a child. Let the child be and continue on. And like, so I would say from that aspect, that was a little jarring or a little, traumatizing itself.
Yes.
But as far as sexuality being a big issue within the church, I would say that was the reason why I personally decided to, like, I have very Christian views. I grew up Christian. I, have nothing against it at all. But my thing is kind of like what Chris was saying, like transparency, and then also too, not even just being transparent, it's actually walking and living, like walking in the talk or talking in the walk or whatever. Mm-hmm. And for me personally, it was just like, well, it's all these things. So why, like, what is the issue? One, with sexuality. And then two, it was like one of the things of not many people am I seeing that are walking in the truth of them either being sinful and then being able to actually come back from it. Because from what I take from Christianity more so is that through Jesus Christ and everything, we are made whole, we are made new. So no matter what we're doing in our life, everybody's going to incur sin at some point in time. Mm-hmm. But sin, I think everyone have their own personal sins, and I think that everyone has to do their own personal walk. And so, like, kind of like when I said, when we stopped kind of going to church, it actually helped me strengthen more of my spirituality of what I think God is, what I think that the reason that Jesus Christ was, and the way that I should live my life. At the end of the day, I'm happy, I'm proud of who I am and what I walk through. And what may be sinful or a sin to you may not be to me personally. And then at the end of the day, the only person that is the judge would be God. But as long as that I'm coming to terms and I'm doing what I know that was good for me and my path and my journey, then I'm living the life God wants me to live. So,
So, new question for the floor then, based off of what you just said. Would anyone like to give their definition or interpretation of what God is to them?
The healer. No.
That's the question.
My portion. A constant friend.
So
He is.
for me, God is that being or that power. That is the reason for us. God is that being or that power. That's the reason for all that being or that power that leads to decision making. It's the thing, the antithesis of who we are, where we're gonna go, how we live, and life in itself. So like it's hard to define what God is or what the thing is in words, because for me, it's the identity of God is more massive than what words can quantify, right? There's no amount of language that I can put to fuel into that, because for me, God is everything. You know, God lives within us. I feel like God is a part of everyone, no matter what your beliefs are. We are a part of God, right? So man was created from ash and dust through the perspective and through the likeness of God himself, right? We were created in his image, right? So if that's the case, we are, by pure definition, an extension of him through interaction, through being, through identity. No matter who you assume or what walk you take in life or who you choose to be, right? We are literally mirrored images of this thing that so many of us want to experience, so many of us have not experienced, or so many of us choose not to experience. So when it comes to identifying God and talking about what God is, I think God is us. We are God because we are a part of him. God is what we see, because he has a major piece in everything that has been created and will be created and will be destroyed.
True. And what is God to you, Jamal?
I think God to me is everything. Like I said, my grandma raising me and having me in the church, and it's funny because we never seen his face, right? So this is a man that we never seen his face, but yet and still we put so much of our trust in him. I know that the things that I have and the things that I do, it's not possible without him. So to me, he's everything, and he will always be everything, even though people tell us that the things that we do are wrong and not pleasing in his sight. I mean, I think that was the thing that hurt the most growing up and hearing that. But my relationship with God is my relationship with God. No one else's.
Worry about you and your house.
God,
But as
right.
for being mine,
For me, I would piggyback a little bit off of both of them, a little bit more off Chris, definitely. I do think that God is an extension, or not even extension, we are God. And so I know people say, oh, well, we don't know how, like kind of what you said, how God looks and whatever. When I look at you, I look at God. When I look at you, I'm looking at God. I'm looking at God through everyone here. And one of my favorite sayings or teachings is God works in mysterious ways. And one of the ways I think that he works through is just us, and like you said, our interactions with one another. And like when we experience pleasant or unpleasant experiences, that's God teaching us in any way, shape, or form. Now, I don't believe God is genderless to me, so I just say God. So, but I do believe that with that, all the answers and lessons that we need to have are through us. It's kind of like the Mary Mary song. It's the God in me. So, but it is. God is in me, you know. I do have a little, off on that song a little bit, but, I have to take it positively. Lava.
The thing for me, though, it was when I would go to church and the pastor would preach, it was always like he was saying something about me or something that I went through.
conviction.
Yes. And so that was the thing of God through him speaking to me.
Baby, it always happened like that.
Yeah, because like I said, I haven't been to church in a long time, and so, like I said, but I do feel like God does speak to me, like I said, through my interactions with other people and like through things I notice. Like it's just one of those, like if you pay attention, you're gonna see it. It's gonna be in front of you. Like, you know, when he tells me to, you know, do this instead of this, and then I find out like, when I took a different way to work and I found out it was a whole bunch of traffic the other way, I'm like, see, that was God telling me, go the other way. Like, you know, like he speaks in many different ways. And like sometimes you may not know who it is speaking to you or what it is, but he be out there.
Right.
He be.
Even through saving you and blocking stuff from happening to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because like you can be in certain types of relationships, and God will show you signs through someone's interactions that you know, hey, I don't need to be here. Hey, I don't need to be doing this. God can be warning you to prevent you from really experiencing some stuff, and it happens, and we don't think about it because you know, like when things happen, and you were like, dang, I shouldn't have came because. My car won't start, and I was still trying to push, and I should have took that sign.
At Babylon.
Oh right, yeah, and I knew I should have went to Babylon last night because I couldn't find anywhere, but I just really wanted to go to have a drink, and I should have
always
that
tell
sign.
me before something happened at Babylon. I get a feeling, and I was like, girl, it's time to go. Next thing you know, pop, 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 pop. Girl,
And it's weird because like I feel like we all have these feelings. Sometimes it's like, oh, I know I ain't supposed to be doing
It's just
this.
intuition.
It's like that intuition, right?
Like that's,
Yeah.
You have that for a reason.
And we have free will. But Lava was about to say something.
I was gonna say, to add to what Devin said and what my definition of God is God is to me is our intuition, and also God is, like has been repeated before, is us. And so like, you know, the whole, when they started having all the merchandise that was WWJD, what would Jesus do? I started like reframing it because to me God is the best possible version of ourselves. And so when people are saying, what would Jesus do? No, what would the best version of you do? And so then you have, to me, that's always been my compass, and it's always been like how I make my decisions. Like, I'm not supposed to be here, but what would the best version of me do? And it's time to get up and leave. And so that's always been, that's what God is to me.
So would the best version of you basically be the purpose that you have here on earth?
Yes, that's what God is to me.
Y'all getting deep.
Right.
But
I'll take
we
that.
can start a church.
Okay, so I need to get my pen and my paper out and start to take notes because I would like because like, you know, like when we talk so like when people start talking about the Bible, right? So like the Bible and Scripture, people get their own interpretation from words, and so a lot of times you can get revelation through just people's experiences as it relates to situations within religion and Christianity that then can be supported and reinforced by Scripture in a whole different way that you never would have thought of, right? So
Relativity.
it's like for what Lava just said, he said instead of saying what would Jesus do, what would the best point of me do, right? And so in the Bible talks about not being God, not being worshipped as God, but striving to be like God, right? So I'm striving to be the best person that I can be, and if I was made in God's image, that is God.
Because there's been plenty of times you want to cuss somebody out, but the best, what would the best version of me do, right? I'm
Cuss that bitch out.
Sometimes that's the answer.
All the time. That is the answer. Because the bitch deserved to be cussed out. She deserved to be cussed out because it's what? The God in me.
But essentially, y'all get what I'm saying.
And God knows your heart.
Absolutely. And what about you, Deaconess Edmund?
Deaconess Edmund?
Yes.
I really speak to the universe. I don't really speak to a God. I do believe that, you know, people have higher powers and all of that, but I'm more of, like how you said, believing in positivity, believing in being a good person, putting great things out, being there for people, speaking up for people when they don't speak up for themselves, you know, different things like that. Being your best self, you know, of course sometimes we fail, but then even when we fail, that is still our best version, because right now I feel like that you do need to get cursed out. I do need to check exactly what God has put on my heart.
That's what you need to advance you.
Exactly.
God used me to cuss you out to make you realize.
Exactly.
Baby, God told me to tap you, bro.
God told me that you were all wrong and you had me fucked up. Yeah.
But that goes back to everyone's interpretation of what they feel like God is putting on their heart. So, I mean, God is putting on your heart, because I'm not going to say that I have not done that, but I try not to.
Yeah, but usually, you know, sometimes you tone it back, and sometimes God's like, no. that's what they need.
But I think, and here's the thing too that we got to look at. When we're on our job, how do we act on our job? Do we cuss people out on our job? Because if we did that to our boss, we may not have a job.
And
But I don't think that you can compare work life to your personal life, because what you do in your work life, that's not what you're
can
do.
do. You can
because your
do.
personal life can affect your work life.
Right.
So why
It
can't your
can,
work
but
life?
in everyday walking, you're not going to. Oh, I wouldn't do this to my boss, so I'm not going to say anything to them. Is that what y'all do? Is that how y'all move? Y'all, whatever y'all do in the workplace, y'all put that into y'all.
I try to.
Not
I
necessarily.
So
Yeah.
what for me
I mean,
in my workplace, so I'm very
everywhere.
transparent about who I am and what I do and how I move and operate. So like when I do things, I always evaluate the pros and the cons of the situation, and I always do it with the business.
That's
in
God
mind,
right there.
right? So like even when me and my boss never get into it, but if there was an opportunity for me and my boss to get into it and they were to say something, I know that God will give me the insight on how I can best share with them how I'm feeling and how I can best get what's meant to be out of the situation. God will give me
That's like
some
HR,
grace,
the EEOC.
because God gives you grace
That's
to
what
handle
that sound
situations, right? And so, but it's all about the intent behind what you're doing. Because it was something that somebody said. It was like, well, if you do something to me, I'm gonna tell you about yourself, and maybe that's God using me to get to you, so you can get what you need, right? But a part of that is free will, and with free will comes your intention behind me telling you. So, am I telling you this because I'm upset with you, and that's what I authentically feel like you need, or am I telling you this because I'm reacting because we're at a discongruence, right? Am I telling you for the embetterment of you, or am I telling myself that I'm doing this for the embetterment of you, but I'm trying to fulfill the sensation that I have to get back at you?
That's a good point. Like, am I telling you so we can try to path forward, or am I telling you just to release some anger?
Right, to make me feel better, right? And so, what's the intent behind that? Because there's that free will piece. And so, if I'm doing that, if I'm telling you to release anger to make myself feel better, can we say that I'm doing this in the way that
So that wouldn't be.
But no matter what,
the best version of me.
of
But no
Right.
matter
Is that the
what
best version of
happens
me?
in that
That's a
time,
good
whether
point.
you're doing the intent for now or for later, it's still a lesson in that. So even if I took the chance now to cuss you out because it's gonna help you out now and not later, and there's no intent to help you, then regardless, in that time, that's a lesson still for you, stating, hey, maybe I need to watch the way that I react. Or this person, I may need to watch the way I react because this person's reacting off of reaction and whatever like that. So I mean, either way, God is still working, honey.
So something that I had mentioned earlier is that even though many of us start with the influence of Christianity, it doesn't mean that that's where we necessarily end up, right? So the thing is, what I find really interesting about other religions from other cultures all over the world is that, at least for me, from the perspective of Christianity and being raised as Christian, as seriously as these other cultures take their religion, I'm trained to look at their religion and their belief system as a myth, whereas I'm simultaneously trained to look at my religion and my culture as a fact. So what I'm wondering is that, does that not also apply to my belief system? Can other people look at my belief system as a collection of myths, just as I've been trained to look at theirs as the same way?
Well, according to ancient aliens.
But I mean, to wrap up the point before I give it to the floor, right, is that when we look at our own spiritual systems, foundations, platforms and texts more critically, that gives us the ability to really see what stands out for us and apply it on more of an individual basis, as opposed to having it all dictated and taking it literally. There's a scale. So what I would like to know is that when it comes to the religion that you were raised with, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not at all, 10 being perfectly, how literally do you apply your religious text that you were raised with to your life currently?
0.
I'm about a 5. And
Why?
that's just because I feel like I take the essence of what the religion was trying to take me, and I take that with me. But when it comes to like the living exactly as what everybody else interprets of the Bible, like that's where I differ, obviously, because like I said, everyone has their own interpretations, and if I live my life by the way you interpret that book, then I'm not gonna be happy. And so I just, like I said, take my own interpretation of what I've learned, and that's it. So but it's about half and half, you know, like overall, I got it. I think I know what you want me to do.
Well, Edmund, I heard you
Well, what
say
you want to
0.
do
What's your
is not what
reasoning
you-
behind giving that answer?
Pretty much just like what he said. Just I guess being surrounded by everyone else's take on what Christianity is, and being Baptist and believing in God and such. And so it just really completely turned me off once I decided to completely accept who I was, and I saw, for me, it's not fully accepted in what I grew up around. So I decided to really be a rebel and march to the beat of my own drum.
It would probably be a 3 or a 4 for me, simply because the little bit I do like of the Bible that I do apply to my life are the parables. Like the stories, because I feel like if we look at history, like stories of actual people, there might be slight deviations, but the gist of the story pretty much keeps its essence.
Mm-hmm.
However, with like the stuff in the Bible that's theoretical, where it's like, okay, that's how I kind of throw that out the window.
As a metaphor.
You said what?
So sometimes I take it as a metaphor.
Right, yeah, because like I feel like there's a lot of stuff that talks about, and that would be a whole different show on a different channel, but that talks about, you know, being homosexual or whatnot. But if you look at like the history of stuff, the word homosexual, or like the concept of what people have condemned sexuality to be, that wasn't a thing until the 1800s. Yep. And so when you have something that was that predates that by centuries, almost millennia.
That could have been what they were talking about.
Exactly. And so that's why I like the parables. Like one of my favorite stories is, I love the story of Daniel in the Lion's Den. I love the story of Samson and Delilah, especially with me having long hair. Like, I don't want to meet my Delilah, and they, you know, and even the story of him, like, it wasn't even like, I interpret it not as his, even though that was his literal hair in the story, but that's what gave him strength. I think we all have, symbolically, we have our own thing that is, you know, our hair. And if we let the wrong person in our life, you know, snip, snip. And so,
period.
Stuff like that, that's where the 3 and the 4 is. Those are the little pieces that I do like of the Bible.
I actually have to piggyback on that because I'm the same way. My mom, when we were kids, she always would read to us. My favorite one, and I haven't found my Boaz yet, so if you're out there,
Come on, Ruth.
But Ruth, yeah.
I love the story.
Like, I love that. That was my favorite thing when my mom sat my sister and I down and she read that to us. So, David and Goliath, I mean, stuff like that, it's, you know, that's what I would relate to. And I mean, just seeing Ruth and everything that she had to go through, it's like, she can do it, I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
I know, you know, speaking of parables, I love to throw this out there. One of my favorite ones, I guess it's technically not a parable, but it is a story from the Bible, is Noah's Ark. Because I look at the flood of 40 days and 40 nights as going through your own personal hell. And something that Noah would do is open up a window in the ark so that a dove can fly through and bring back something.
Come on.
And he opened it up enough times that eventually an olive branch was brought, which is evidence that there was dry land out there. And the way that I like to express and interpret that story is that if you're going through hell, the only way that you can know that things are actually changing for you when you're in the center of that is if you open up the window for faith. And that's what we are.
Wow.
Stories are
I miss what you said. I was somebody fan some tissue, a puzzle of water.
Bro, it's memories.
Okay, well, that's all. I'm like that, and I'm doing all this because, like, I think I'm a little indifferent than everybody because I am at a 10 when it comes to applying the text that I've been taught growing up into my everyday life, just because of what you said. Because everything in the Bible is left up to interpretation. Because God will place it on your heart to interpret things differently based off the situation that you're in.
That's true.
And so at the base of no matter where I am or what I've been through in life, I know that there's a text that I can go to need assistance, to get help. There's stories that I can read. So there's always some metaphorical value no matter through what I'm going through. And so a lot of times It can come through reading, but it can come through people that I meet like that. Like your revelation for Noah's Ark was a revelation that I never thought of before, right? And so because your interpretation of the text, you gave insight into me, into my life to help me get through something that I could have been dealing with, right? So I can't say 1, 2, 3, but I say 10 because within the word, you can always take something and apply it into your everyday. Now, granted, you can be led on certain things. Certain things you're not going to always agree with, right? But who's to say that how things are written are the way in which things are supposed to meant to be, right? There could be revelations that we have yet to discover or that have yet to be seen, but we don't know.
In the beginning was the word.
Right, in the beginning was the word. And so like a lot of people talk about like sin, and like a big issue with people's issues with the Bible is that, well, I'm not, the God don't love me because I'm sinning and I'm knowing, especially as it relates to homosexuality. In the Bible, it talks about man was not born without sin, right? So as soon as Eve bit the apple, sin was brought into this world, right? And Adam and Eve, they weren't born, they were created, right? So from that point, every human being that was born into this world with the capacity to sin, right? And so the Bible speaks of more sins than just what we do internally. They speak of sins that we don't even commit, sins that we might not even be aware of, but people choose to pinpoint that sin. And the Bible talks about not being God, but striving to be like God, right? And so on our journey to striving to being like Him, there's that willingness that we have the ability and capability to be able to sin, because if we did it, we would be our true and pure selves, which would be the definition of being who God is, right? And at that point, God says, no, worship no other God, because that is blasphemy. So if we're not sinning, or if we're not striving to be like Him because we're so perfect, we're not at the truth of what the word is getting at. Right? So like I said, as it relates to me, it said a 10 because there are things from the Bible that I've been able to learn and read and evaluate through life, no matter what I've been going through, and being able to apply them into my everyday life and situation and how I deal with people. Because at the heart of the word for me is love. And I act out of love no matter what I do.
I'll take that.
You gave me an extra point, so 4 or 5.
You know,
I'm at a 5. I was like, I hear what you're saying.
I don't even know what I'm at, honestly, because I've always questioned Christianity, but I've always been one to question any and everything that I believe, because my mom always that. Like, I feel like you have to question it now, which that took me into an early on thing of actually seeking outside of Christianity. So like, for the longest, I love history. History is like one of my favorite subjects, always been. And so like, I took a historical approach to look at the history of Christianity, as well as other Judeo-Christian beliefs like Muslim or being, Jewish or so like that, and reading the Torah and reading the Quran and things like that. And then even expanding to looking at Buddhism, looking at, Hinduism, all of those things. And to me, and then also to watching Ancient Aliens as well, one of my favorite shows. It's like a way of actually taking everything, because there's a lot of things that are they're parables, but like they're actual things that are actually that may have actually happened, but it has been cross-referenced in other religions, because kind of like what you said, or one of you guys said earlier about us believing that Christianity is fact and every other religion is a myth, or vice versa.
Similar.
They're very.
Some of them are exact
same. Based on the region that you're from.
Right.
And so it's like, for me, I would say I wouldn't put myself on that scale. I just know that by me looking at other things, it gave me the answers that I needed for me looking at, okay, well, why do I still believe this view from a Christian view to myself, even though I don't necessarily consider myself Christian? And so I say it strengthened it a little bit more, but I wouldn't put myself in it.
I think that most religions have the same building blocks, like as in for like thinking about love and talk the view of do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and just even like talk about like how you live on earth is indicative of your life after death, like through like methods of reincarnation, right? So like in karma and what you like for Buddhism, right? So like how you live your current life is indicative on the next life that you assume, right? So the ability for you to rise in social status, right? From that perspective is how you treat people within Christianity, right? Right, as long as you follow the word and you don't sin, you can make it into the gates of heaven. For those who don't,
or you repent for your
or you repent for your sins, right? And for those who don't, you go to hell. So I think that within every religion, there's the same bit about same with Jehovah's Witnesses. Like with Jehovah's Witnesses, they call them the saints, and only 144,000 people gonna make it in. But how you deem yourself as one of those 144,000 is that you live your life to the fullest and you live your life out of love. So the people through life who've lived their life in that way are the people who make it in, and everybody else remains on earth in like this stagnated place, right? Even with Roman Catholicism, like Catholics, right? It's indicative of how you live. If you don't, you go to purgatory, right? But it's all about your value and what you put into the world, what you imparted to other people, and how you treat other people, right? So at the heart of every religion, even satanic and Christian Science and Wiccans, it's all about how you treat things and what you put into the earth and what you put into the world. Like Wiccan is about what you put into earth, like because when earth is the mother being, like what you put into it and like feedback, systems of feedback and loops, and that's what that's about. So it's about putting something into fertile ground. That could be people, relationships, yourself. That can be the earth. A mustard seed. And what you get out of it, is what you put into it. But in the middle is free will. It's your choice. You know what I'm saying? Like there's groundwork that's been laid for you, but at the end of the day, it's your decision to make with whatever religion or religious values you've been received to move forward.
Baby, I knew we was talking about religion, but I didn't know y'all was taking me to church today.
I'm sorry, it's been one person.
I didn't know.
There's been one person that's taking you to church.
But
Pastor Deacon.
do I have time or no?
Closing thoughts before I
Wrap
up
her
the
up.
conversation.
I will say, in other words, since we're talking about the scale of where we're at on that, I did go through a phase where I actually loathed and detested Christianity, because when I started looking up the history of like certain things, one thing that kept coming up, that kept being a common denominator in the history of Christianity, was Christianity has always been on the side of the oppressor. Mm-hmm. If you look at the Crusades, you look at the Byzantine era, like a lot of these wars were based on the premise of converting people. Mm-hmm. They did all these crazy things, like, you know, they would rape the women and the children, then they would slap Jesus on it. You know, we're doing it in the name of the Lord. I'm like, what?
Yeah, with slavery, they definitely did steal Christianity into us so we can maintain the oppressed. So that is another reason why I decided not to continue down that path, because this is something that the white people taught us. This is not anything that our people believed in. So I'm like, I can't give it.
They would murder sciences because science was considered a witchcraft. Right. And so it's just
but there are African Christians. So.
There were always.
That's what I'm saying.
Right. There was always somebody or a group of people that Christianity had to oppress, whether it be gays, whether it be the sciences, whether it be people of color. Like it's always been.
And so that's one of my biggest issues with religion, right? So like those are traditions of oppression, right? That have been stemmed down for years, and that people still view that those systems of oppression are the ways that people review religion, right? And so I think that there's a big misconception that, but I think that at all times, it's not about religion. For me, it's about the spirituality and the pieces behind the things, the building blocks that go into religion, because everybody's entitled to believe whatever the hell that they want to believe, right? Who am I to say you're wrong because you believe this way and I believe this way? But no matter how I believe, you believe in something, and what we believe in is all based off the same things, the same ideas, and the same building blocks. And so I understand the trauma behind the trauma behind people's feelings towards Christianity, because of how it oppressed systems of people, because of how it oppressed us as being black people, being brought to America in the name of the Lord, because how people were allowed to be killed and raped just because they didn't want to convert, like how people were
they
set on fire at the stake and
hung. The exact thing that they said God gave us is free will.
Right.
You ripped them.
And so because of those failed and misrepresentations that's your word. Those misrepresentations of the Bible and what people decided to take for them without including or taking out the whole text is why people fault religion so much, because people pick and choose what they want to abide by instead of looking at everything from Genesis to Revelation.
What they call
and taking everything in full context and acting out of love. People act out of hate, and people act out of individual decision because they want to assume some type of authority over other folks. Because I feel like I can tell you that you're wrong because I'm doing this, but fail to look at themselves. And so when you really read the word from Genesis to Revelations, it teaches you to look internally before you start to look externally. Because I cannot tell you how to get your house in order until mine is in order.
Come on, Shondo.
Perfect stopping point. So, in order to finish tonight's conversation, there are a few points that I'd like to make. Point number one is that religion is not off limits to critical thinking. Something that was mentioned earlier is that there are religions and belief systems all over the world, and if you triangulate them, you'll see that there are quite a few things that they have in common. A good starting point if you're interested in that type of work is A Hero with a Thousand Faces and The Power of Myth, both by Joseph Campbell. Thing number two, when it comes to the idea of original sin and human beings being inherently flawed, one thing that separates us from the angels is that we have a choice, they don't. So when we choose to do the right thing and when we choose to be our best selves and learn anything we can in between, it makes it that much more of a victory for us. And it makes it that much more sweeter for God, the universe, or whoever it is that you believe in. So when it comes to tonight's conversation, even though it started off awkward, the only reason why I did is because it was so important. And I'm glad that this conversation was something that we could have because it was necessary. And I'm hoping that our viewers out there can connect to this. I would like to say also, because we're still connected with United Black Element, if you're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and you're interested in free HIV and syphilis testing, you can actually call the number 214-393-3700. Also, if any of what you heard tonight was interesting to you, you're looking forward to diving deeper into spirituality and you're wondering how, as a core group member and as affiliate of United Black Element, something that I do for my community, something that I do for myself is something called Spiritual BFF. If you go to myspiritualbff.com, I actually come from a Christian foundation. I say it's Christian roots but spiritual fruits.
Come on, Judy.
I've made the journey of having to take the I can't even get it out. Taking the spirituality that I've been given and turning it into something more personal and something that works for me. And I want to show y'all how to do it too. So go to myspiritualbff.com, and I even have a YouTube channel, so check it out. See y'all next season.
And that is